Hey, everybody. Welcome back to You Are What You Love. My guest today is Molly Burdick, one of the co-hosts of Pod Prejudice. So welcome to the pod, Molly.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm so excited to have you. I've been listening to Pod Prejudice for ages, so it's really fun to not be listening to you through my phone.
Amazing. Oh, I love getting to talk to people who have actually listened to the show. That's always really fun.
Yeah, it's a fun one. It's a really good one.
Thanks.
For anyone who hasn't listened, I think you'll like it if you are enjoying this show. It is a wonderful show in which Molly reads Pride and Prejudice with her friend Becca. One of them is a massive Austen fan, and the other has never experienced it. So it's a fun, I think, sharing of something you love with a friend that you love. So
Yeah.
Molly, what piece of media are we talking about today that changed who you are as a person?
We're talking about High School Musical today.
I think that's a perfect thing to be talking about today.
I am so excited.
It's a great one. So the Disney Channel original movie classic, High School Musical, which, as we all know, but some people may not, went on to be an amazing trilogy of films that stood out and stood the test of time, I would say.
Yeah, I actually watched it. I rewatched the first one a couple days ago, and it really holds up.
Yeah, it does. It's still a great film. And I don't know that we can say is the reason Zac Efron has a career, but is the reason I know who Zac Efron is.
I mean, what was he in before that, really?
He was in, I think it's called Summerland or Summer. He was in, as a child, he was in like a One Tree Hill style
Mm,
TV show,
got it.
which I only know because after watching High School Musical, I said, what else has this boy been in?
Right.
At the
Right.
time,
I
boy.
think that it is fair to say that our generation only knows who he is because of High School Musical.
Yes, and I do feel that's what ultimately turned him into a movie star to some degree.
Oh, yeah. A
So,
heartthrob.
big piece of culture for us.
Yeah.
Well, so what's your first memory of watching High School Musical?
So I'm not sure if this was my first time watching it, but my first memory of it is going to my friend's dad's house, which was down the street from me, and watching it on her little TV, before there were flat screens, watching it, and there was a commercial break, and I had to go home because, her and her family were gonna have dinner or something, and
Mhm.
I just remember sprinting down the street during a commercial break to get back in time to turn it back on.
Oh, I love that. You had your, specific amount of time that you wouldn't miss a single thing.
Yeah, I was like, "There's 3 minutes. I have these, 2-foot long I don't know, how old was I? I was in 5th grade, I think, 4th or 5th
Okay.
grade. So I was, 10, and I was running down the street, to get back in time, and I don't know if that's the first time I watched it because I was already obsessed with it, I guess, at that point, but
Yeah.
that's my first, clear memory of seeing it, and I think it's possible it was my first time watching it, it was premiere day, and it had been hyped up on Disney Channel, and it was coming out, and I was like, "Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god," but then I had this interruption, and I was like,
Yeah.
"No!" So I ran down the street.
I love the idea that I hope it was your first time watching it because I love the idea that you were so hooked that you were like, I must make it back because
Yeah,
what happens to this high school basketball player who needs to be in the drama club must
right,
also be in the school musical.
right. Oh my gosh, just thinking about it being the first time, honestly, it's such an iconic storyline now
Yeah.
that I mean, it's probably loosely based on some sort of classic literature, and, me having been a Shakespeare nerd and a Chekhov nerd and a Jane Austen nerd, I could probably pinpoint what exactly it's based on, at the time, it was so new, so to hear it just described, what it is, and, for that to have been a new concept to me is so fun to think about.
Something I found out recently from someone, was that they didn't when they watched it the first time, they didn't understand why for anybody who's never seen High School Musical or somehow isn't aware of it, High School Musical centers on Zac Efron's character, who is the star of the basketball team, who also, wants to be in the school musical, and this causes an, upheaval of the social strata.
The status
Um
quo.
A status quo, yes. No one is sticking to the status quo, as we later learn. But it also heartwarmingly opens it up for everyone else in the high school to chase what they love, despite what is expected of them. So ultimately, a heartwarming story, and a lovely romance between Vanessa Hudgens' character and And in Zac Efron. But I was talking to someone recently because I mentioned we were covering High School Musical on the podcast, and they brought up the fact that they didn't connect with the movie when we were kids because they didn't understand why he couldn't do both. Like they actually didn't understand the concept.
Right.
And I was like, well, it's the musical. The musical is happening at the same time as the basketball season. Like you have to go to one or the other. Like they both require serious commitment. And it was fascinating because the school that she went to, she was never involved in sports. So she just
Mhm.
didn't understand the fact that those two could overlap. And so she watched that movie at like 10 or 11 and just was like, I don't get it. Like, I just don't understand what the problem
Yeah,
is.
and it's interesting because in that is true in high school, like, things do I mean, at some high schools, things do overlap, but the main problem in High School Musical, nobody seems to think like, "Oh, you're not gonna be able to manage your time well." They're like, "You have to be all or nothing,"
Yeah.
and, like, if you turn your back on this legacy of basketball, which was like your dad played basketball and now you play basketball, like then who are you even? And they're like, they're so mad about it. I actually in high school, I was a swimmer and I got an injury to my inner ear and I couldn't swim anymore. And so for a season, like I used to do swimming in the fall and the school musical in the spring.
Okay.
But the first season that I injured my ear, in the fall, I couldn't swim, so I was able to do the school play, and which is, like, the non-musical,
Right.
and that, like, set me on this path of, like, straight plays and Shakespeare that I, like, then went on to go to college for.
So if you had never injured your ear, you would still be an Olympic swimmer, I guess.
Probably. No, I was terrible. I was not good at swimming.
Well, so what was your life like? It sounds like you were like 4th or 5th grade, 10 or 11. I think a important thing to remember about experiencing media at this time is that it was live. Like there was no on demand or DVD at this time. There was like a hype up for this premiere. What were you up to at 10 or 11 when you watched this movie?
Gosh, I went to school, I came home at 8 o'clock every night, there was a DCOM. I was such a Disney Channel kid, like, such a Disney Channel kid. I My life was dictated by what was gonna be playing at 8 p.m., um, and before that, This Sweet Life of Zack and Cody would be on, so I would be watching that, and then I would go have dinner with my parents, and then I would go watch the DCOM, and I guess, like, I did homework at some point in there, um, but I was, like, a pretty nerdy kid, I was really into, like, math and reading, and DCOMs. Like, that was truly my whole personality was Disney Channel. Yeah.
I think people don't remember as much because and maybe it is, and maybe I just don't talk to kids as much, but it
Mhm.
seems like when we were growing up, you were a Disney Channel kid or you were a Nickelodeon kid, and it was as intense as some of as, like, the Montagues and the Capulets, like, you were one or the
Yeah.
other.
It was one or the other. It was Disney Channel, Nickelodeon, or Cartoon Network, and then you could also be a Bobby Jack or a Paul Frank kid. Like, you could
Oh,
only have one
true.
animated monkey.
Yep. God forbid.
Um, yeah.
I was a Paul Frank, so
Oh, I was a
I
Bobby
gotta throw
Jack.
it out there.
Yep.
Oh,
Mm.
you know what I didn't ask is what town you were growing up in. What town
I
did
was
you
in
live in?
Syracuse, New York.
Okay, this feels I was in, I mean, I grew up in LA, but I think when High School Musical came out, I was living in Florida, actually,
Mm.
at the time. And then by the time the second I think I moved right after the first High School Musical came out, because I remember watching High School Musical in Florida because I didn't have friends, so I watched that, like, all by myself, and then, got obsessed with it, and then I remember by the time the second one came out, I definitely lived here because I remember doing the pool scene in the summer
Mhm.
at
Mhm.
people's pools, and it was a whole thing.
Right, nice. I also should mention that, the other topic that I had, like, played with coming on here was Star Wars, and I had seen Star Wars for the first time in 4th grade, um, and I was obsessed with it. So before that, I was obsessed with Harry Potter, then I saw Star Wars, and I was obsessed with Star Wars, and I think timeline-wise, High School Musical came out after that. because I'm remembering based on, like, what classrooms I was walking in my High School Musical t-shirt. So I think that I was in 4th like, the end of 4th or 5th grade when High School Musical came out, which would mean that it was after my Star Wars phase had begun.
So, did you find yourself sort of, like, swapping obsessions for the next thing? Like, did you hyper focus in on one thing?
I would hyper focus and then swap, and, like, when I saw Star Wars for the first time, I was in 4th grade, and I was so torn on Harry Potter or Star Wars that at the end of the year, my teacher gave out awards to people, like, "You were good at this thing," or, like, "You brought this lunchbox to school every day," or, like, something like that, and mine was "Can't make up her mind between Harry Potter and Star Wars" award.
Oh.
So, like, I, like, really hyper fixated on things, and so then High School Musical was my next one, which began my musical theater phase.
Oh, I love that. So I love that it's like there can only be one. Like
Yeah.
there was no world in which you
No.
could watch Star Wars and then watch Harry Potter. Like no, one of
No.
them has to be.
One has to go.
There can only be one Highlander. I love it. So you were like 4th, 5th grade. Were you swimming at the time or was it really just it was like school decoms? That was the
School decoms, swimming didn't start until middle school. So when High School Musical came out, if you'll remember, it was a very big thing and it became a junior musical. I don't think that it was ever an actual person musical. It was mostly for children's theaters. There might have been like High School Musical, the musical at high school. Oh, I guess there was because then there was High School Musical, the musical, the series more recently that was about a high school putting on High School Musical. So my children's theater, which I wasn't a part of at that time, was putting on High School Musical, and I had only in the past, like, gone to see my friends do children's theater, like, I had never participated. I had done school plays, like, we were required to stand on stage and sing about, like, groceries. I don't know why that's the one I remember, but there was, like, school musicals like that, and outer space and stuff, but, when Syracuse Children's Theater announced that they were putting on High School Musical, I went to my mom and I was like, "I simply have to do this." And so I signed up and I went, and it was the largest production I think they had ever put on. There was like 50 people in each cast, and I think they even added a cast. So there was like Saturday morning rehearsals, Saturday evening rehearsals, Sunday morning rehearsals, and Sunday evening rehearsals. So there's probably like 200 children involved in this.
Okay.
And I went to my friend's house. I was cast as a skater girl.
Oh,
Not the skater girl who becomes a cellist, but just a skater
just a
girl. Yeah. And I went to my friend's house who, like, was actually a skater girl, and I was like, "I need to borrow your clothes for my costume," and, like, all this stuff. And she was actually in another cast of it, but she was
Okay.
playing, I think, like, a brainiac or something.
Okay.
Um, so I borrowed her clothes, and I did High School Musical, and it was such a time in my life, and after that, I did every show at Syracuse Children's Theater until I got to high school, and then I did every musical and a bunch of the plays, and then I went to college for theater and became an actor and playwright, and that's, like, it's all because of High School Musical.
I love that. I think that's I love that Disney Channel movies at the time, I feel like and I'm sure they have some version of it now, and I'm just not a child watching Disney Channel movies,
Sure.
but I feel like Disney Channel movies at that time were these, like, personality defining films
Yes.
because it was part of your schedule. Like, you really came back to watch, like, just like you said, like, Sweet Life of Zack and Cody, and then you went right into the movie,
Mhm.
and whatever was on had been hyped up through a long period of time, and then they were these, like, movies that were focused on people slightly older than you, so it felt a little aspirational,
Mhm.
but still attainable,
Mhm.
and some sort of identity like, every movie had this big identity piece to it.
Yeah, they really did, and they all were, like, they were focused on they had some sort of message because they're angled towards children. So watching them as an adult, like, it's really pure to see the message at the end, like, just to see the jocks accept their baker friend who, like, bakes cookies for them all and their musical friend who likes to dance. Though, well, watching it more recently, I was like, "You guys made that turn around really fast." Like, you were
Yeah.
like really on him one day, and the next morning you're like, never mind, we hurt his feelings. But there was that, and they're just like feel good movies,
Yeah.
and they're all just like really. I come away feeling like I'm a better person because I watched them.
Do you remember, like, when you watched it and you got obsessed, what moment hooked you? Was it a character? Was it a storyline?
I was such a romantic. I am a romantic. I'm a hopeless romantic. But the relationship between Troy and Gabriella, I was obsessed. I was shipping. I was a big shipper. I would read their fan fiction. I would get posters of them together. I followed their real life relationship like it was my job. I remember I was in summer camp at the time, and we had like bunks, and I was on like the lower bunk of a bunk bed, and I had my, like, whatever I like J-Bop or whatever it was called
Oh,
magazine.
it's like J14 and, like,
J14, yeah,
teen
why
yeah,
J-Bop?
J-Bop. I think because there was Tiger Beat, there's a bop of some sort, but there was Tiger Beat and J14 are the ones I avidly remember.
Yeah, and they would have the pull-out posters of,
Mm.
like, Troy and Gabriella, and
Yeah.
I would get that, and I would put it up inside my little bunk bed.
Oh.
And there was the, like, make your outfit like a High School Musical, and you could, like, buy your outfit to match theirs, but yeah, it was their relationship. I was obsessed with it. I wanted them to kiss so bad. They never did
Did they
until the
never
second
kiss?
movie. In
Oh,
the
I
second
was
movie, they
like
do.
I
Yeah.
could have sworn.
Yeah, no, it was a big deal when they kissed in the second movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you feel like that type of romance, like, contributed to it's a sort of, two separate worlds, leaving behind your, your peers or your peer group, and sort of like a forbidden romance and a long slow burn? Do you feel
Mhm.
like that, contributed to sort of your Austen experience and enjoyment of that at all?
Potentially, I mean, it definitely that's the kind of romance that I like to read now and watch. And I did do a thread on Twitter a couple of months or maybe a year ago, I don't have any concept of time, of the High School Musical characters as the characters in Pride and Prejudice, and the more I think about it, the more it makes sense to me. So, because honestly, Troy, like, he's a much nicer person, but he has to act like a different kind of person around his friends, so that's kind of how Darcy is around people he doesn't know, and then Gabriella is like a bookworm and kind of shy, but she's not shy. I mean, Lizzie's not shy, but I could go on. The biggest one for me was Sharpay as Caroline Bingley, who's in love with Darcy, who's Troy, and her brother Ryan is I don't remember who I ended up saying that he was, but he honestly he would make a great Bingley, except mean.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, no. Chad was Bingley because he's a curly fry.
Oh, of course. I
Yeah,
see that. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Yeah, it's interesting. I think it's interesting looking back at the types of romances we watched as kids and versus like the types of romances that are on screen now. They're
Mhm.
so much quicker. And there's
Totally.
so much more kind of sex and kissing. Like you said, like I remember being obsessed with Troy and Gabriella in the first movie and believing they were truly in love. And when you just told me that they didn't kiss in the first movie, it feels shocking.
Right. They
Um,
didn't even kiss until the end of the second movie. Like, it was a whole bit that every time they try to kiss, someone interrupts them. And, I mean, I'm pretty sure I hope that your listeners don't come for me. Let me just make sure that they don't kiss at the end of the movie.
you're
A
like,
quick
ma'am,
Google
they've
search.
been
Do
kissing.
Troy and Gabriella kiss. They don't have their first kiss until the end of the movie, High School Musical 2. Yes.
Okay.
Phew.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
you're like, "This feels core," and I am certain.
yeah, like, every time someone interrupts them in some way, but they get close twice in the first movie, and then throughout the second movie, it's like, they're making us wait, and they finally kiss under the sprinklers, and it's, like, this beautiful moment. Um, and there's, like, fireworks happening, but that's, like, truly the slowest of slow burns. It's really
Yeah.
Austen-esque, honestly.
Yeah, it's 2 full movies of
Yeah.
yeah, it's so funny because reanalyzing a lot of this old or old to us kind of material, I growing up hated rom-coms. Like, I was so anti-rom-com, and now I love a rom-com, as a semi-well-adjusted adult. But back then I was like, "Ugh, hate a rom-com." Loved High School Musical. Loved, like, the decom of it all.
Yeah.
And now looking back, I'm like, "Oh, it's because we were essentially being fed, like, Regency romance, but in a
Totally.
modern situation."
Yeah, I mean, the slow burn is what's fun, and that's basically what all of Jane Austen is them pining and pining and pining, and then finally at the end, everything gets tied up with a neat little bow. And it's like once it happens, it's kind of boring. Like, what now?
Right, yeah, it's like, I don't really care about you being together, I just I wanna
Right.
watch you not be together.
Right,
Um,
exactly.
yeah. Yeah, I think it is really interesting that that's what, like, appealed to our generation as a young group. Because I think now when you look at, like, where did the some of those people that we grew up watching end up, like, you've got Riverdale and you've got, you've got, just bigger, much faster. It's more like the One Tree Hill of it all, where
Mhm.
it is just like, "Oh, they're together," and, "Oh, they're having sex," and, "Oh, okay, I guess we're here."
Right, I wonder if it has to do with also just the fact that it is being targeted at a younger audience, although I guess I don't know what the kids are watching these days, and also I don't know, High School Musical still feels targeted at me, and I'm
Yeah.
27 years old. Um, but I think that, like, holding off on all of that stuff was, like, potentially just part of, like, keeping things PG, but ultimately, it's doing something bigger, which is, like, building the romance instead of just, like, building the sex appeal.
Yeah, yeah, I think there's and it's so crazy too because I remember the obsession of it all being like, I mean, Zac Efron's the hottest man to ever walk this earth,
Mhm.
so it wasn't
Right.
like, we were all so, obsessed with it all, and it was so funny to me. It's so funny to me to look back at that and be like, "Yeah, but I think it's because we were obsessed with the personality of Troy of it all,"
Right. The soft
it's
boy.
yeah. I was like, "Man, I do want a boy who wants to play basketball and be the romantic lead in a musical."
Yeah, of
Like,
course.
yeah, it's just interesting to me that there was that was really what became sort of that romantic awakening for our generation, is
Mhm.
just here's a nice boy who wants nice things. He just wants to be
Yeah.
nice to you.
Yeah, I will say, though, that now as an adult and as a queer adult, I look back and I am furious about the Ryan of it all,
Oh,
um,
yeah.
because trying to pass that boy off as straight and they really did that. So
Yeah, yeah. Oh, man. Um, okay, so you watch High School Musical, you join your first musical, which is High School Musical.
yes.
And then is that the summer? Is that when that movie came out? Or was that kind of
I
is that
th
during school? I
I
can't
think the
remember.
movie came out in the winter.
Okay.
Just because I remember feeling like the beginning, it starts at New Year's Eve. I felt like, "Oh, that's happening now." I could be wrong, but it felt wintry to me, and then I did the musical the following fall.
Mhm.
And it was like a weekend, like, we would rehearse on weekends, and then we had our 4 shows or our 6 shows or whatever over the course of a couple weeks, and again, the cast was like 50 people. Um it was very high drama.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
50 people is so I'm thinking of 50 children, like, running around, and
Yeah, and it
that's
was like and
crazy.
they divided it up, like, 25 skater kids, 25 basketball players, 25 smart people. Um, I guess that those are the 3 it was all for stick to the status quo. Like, that was the only
Oh,
time
okay.
there was, like, the big number,
Yeah, that everybody was
basically.
on stage for.
Yeah. Um, yeah, it was a blast. I remember just, like, idolizing the guy who was playing the cello playing, uh, skater kid.
Skater Kid, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, because there was this big room backstage, and we would all just, like, hang out there until the stick to the status quo, and then there was, like, the end song, and then there might be a few times when we crossed behind, but for the most part, like, that's where everyone was in, and it was so silly to cast that many people.
Yeah,
Um,
for a couple numbers.
yeah, but it wasn't like there was auditions or anything. Your parents just, like, paid tuition, and then you go to it's like for
Oh,
kids,
I
so
see.
you, like, go
Yeah.
and you're like, "I'm gonna learn how to sing and dance for a little bit, and then it's, like, basically, like, theater class for the weekends.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's nice. It's like it's something there's something very sweet about everyone being included in something like High School Musical, specifically.
Yeah. What's funny is that was my first show with them, and my last show with them was equally as large, which is funny because in between we had shows that embarrassingly, like, we did, Once on This Island, which I absolutely should not have been in, but again, they were doing the junior version and took out the point that it's a
The
play
point
about
of the
race.
musical. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So that's, like, embarrassing, but there was, like, 9 of us in that, and then we did, Willy Wonka, and there was probably, like, maybe, like, 20 kids in that. So, reasonably sized plays in between, but my first play was High School Musical with a million kids, and I was in the ensemble, and my last play when I was in 8th grade with them was Cats.
Oh my goodness.
And I played Grisabella the Glamour Cat. I had, like, made my way up the ranks, and I finally got my lead role, and there was, like, 75 children dressed in unitards behind me.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I do have video evidence of that one, so
I would like to see it,
I will
yeah.
I will show you. I'm really proud of it, honestly. That was my peak.
Oh, I love that. Well, so it sounds like you kinda watched High School Musical and then got obsessed with the idea of being in High School Musical and got to do so, and
Yes.
then it does sound like it lended itself to more musical theater that you weren't a part of before.
Yeah, so I started doing musicals. I was in all of the musicals at Syracuse Children's Theater for, like, 5th grade, 6th grade, 7th grade for 4 years.
Mhm.
Um, I did their summer or they had, like, a spring break musical. They did them all the time, and I was just in all of them, and I loved it, and then I got to high school, and I was in the musicals there. I was in vocal jazz, concert choir. I was doing all this singing and stuff. I was in dance class, not like dance, like, I didn't do any kind of real dance, but there was a instead of gym, my senior year, I took dance, or my
Oh, I
junior
see,
year,
okay.
yeah. Um, and I just, like, got the theater bug and wanted to do theater, and then I got into Shakespeare from there, and I went to college. I didn't end up going to college where they did musicals, though before I went to college, I would go through phases of listening to different musical soundtracks. So it started with High School Musical, again,
Okay.
and then I, like, got into the Broadway musicals, and I was, like, obsessed with Book of Mormon and Wicked and Spring Awakening, and I just, like, went through all of my phases with all these musicals, listening to them nonstop in the car ride to and from school. My parents were so sick of it. Um, I was obsessed, and I would, like, get the T-shirts. We would go see them when they came, like, the touring casts came to Syracuse, and I would see th like, I saw Hairspray, and I saw Wicked, and, I was really a musical theater kid until college, and when I was like, "Now I'm gonna focus on straight theater," and I went to a school that didn't have a musical theater program, and I focused on Chekhov. I studied abroad in Russia. I was, like, prepared to go into theater professionally, and I mean, I work at a theater now, so I'm still in the theater world, but the pandemic kinda pushed me back from that and, like, sent me into the podcasting world more so, but my full-time job is still at a theater, and I still write. I just haven't been acting as much.
Very cool. I do love I mean, I'm sure Kenny Ortega had no idea that he was changing your life.
I should write him a letter. I should thank him for putting me on the path that I'm on today.
You should. I think he would really appreciate
Yeah, I mean,
it.
whenever anyone asks me how I got started in theater, I always say High School Musical because it was truly the thing that was like, "I could do that?"
That's amazing. I think there's something so fun about that being the piece because it was such, like, a cultural moment because I remember High School Musical came out, then High School Musical 2 obviously came out, as a DCOM as well,
Mhm.
but by the time High School Musical 3 came out, it had become such a big thing that they were like, "Let's do a theatrical release." Like, I remember going to the movie theater to see a DCOM, which I'm almost positive was the first time they had ever done that.
It was the first time they had ever done that, and I was in high school, and I all my friends were like, "Yeah, let's go see it," and I was like, "Yes, let's go see it," but I wanted to see it in a way that they were not prepared to go see it. We went to a nighttime showing, So it was a bunch of adults. It was not a full theater by any means. In fact, it was mostly empty.
Okay.
But it was a bunch of people who just wanted to make fun of the movie.
Oh.
And I was not having it. This is so embarrassing. I was so serious about seeing this movie that when my friends were like talking during it and the people in front of us were talking during it, I straight up got up. We were sitting in the back. I walked all the way to the front of the movie theater and I sat down in the front row, and I remember holding up my middle finger to the whole theater behind me and being like, I can't deal with them. So I like sat in the front row and watched High School Musical 3. However, I have not seen it since. I only saw High School Musical 3 that one time.
Really?
Yeah. As far as I remember.
Is that because it wasn't like it didn't live up to your expectations, or your first viewing of
Yeah,
it wasn't great?
I don't
Or
remember. So I think it's possible I've seen it since then, but I just don't remember it feeling like a decom. And maybe I should watch it tonight, honestly. I have no plans. High School Musical, if you asked me to rank them, it would go 2, 1, 3.
Okay.
And I think that they peaked with High School Musical 2, and it's potential that they like actually didn't need to do High School Musical 3 at all. But I'll get back to you after I rewatch it and let you know.
Wow. I have to tell you, I respect your opinion, but I'm a 1-3-2 girl. Yeah.
Whoa.
I
All right.
know. I hate to throw hands.
All right. Well, maybe I'll marathon.
Yeah, I have to look up, because I do think High School Musical 3 came out, was it 2012?
Yeah, something like that. I was definitely in high school, so that would have been when I was a junior in high school.
Oh my god, no, it came out in 2008? Is that possible?
No.
That can't be true.
I thought I was in high school. Hang on.
It
Really?
absolutely says 2008 on the internet. I have such a skewed memory of this.
Me too. This is like the Berenstain Bears conundrum.
Yeah. Oh my god, I cannot believe that. Wow, I'm flabbergasted.
All right, so I was not in high school. I was going into high school.
Yeah, I was starting high school. It was 8th grade.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Yeah, so High School Musical 1 was 2006, High School Musical 2 was 2007, and High School Musical 3 was 2008.
Wow. I really do have a different memory of this. I thought High School Musical 3 came out years later.
Yeah, I thought it was a huge that's crazy. I mean, I guess time changes when you're a child, but in my mind, I fully remembered it being in high school. I guess it was like the intense period right before you go into high school, so that
Right.
sounds
And you're
right
like
to me.
starting to feel like an adult, and they're going into college, like they feel like adults. Um wow. Okay, so you like won the best, which is definitely a valid pick because it is the original and it changed the game.
Absolutely.
But you liked High School Musical 2 the worst?
I do. I know. They have some great songs, but I think what it is that I remember it's not that I hate High School Musical 2. I have nothing against High School
Sure.
Musical 2. I do skip it in a rewatch. Like, I will watch High School Musical and then just watch High School Musical 3 and feel fulfilled and fine.
That's probably what I'm gonna do because I just rewatched High School Musical 1 and now I'm gonna watch High School Musical 3 tonight just to see what it's all about. But High School Musical 2 to me is like such I just was gonna say it's such vibes, but like it really is just vibes after vibes.
It's not that I hate High School Musical 2 at all, but I think I remember High School Musical, for me, I watched it when I was living in a town that I, like, just had no friends and was in, like, I was like, "Oh, this is amazing, and I love this."
Mhm.
And then High School Musical 2, I had just moved to a new town. I had moved back to LA and, was kind of, like, in a new school, a new environment, and I remember it being the first movie that, like, we all watched and enjoyed and loved, but I also remember people kind of making fun of it at the time.
Mhm.
And also feeling like some of the numbers, I was like, I know all of the words to all of them, but I remember feeling like, oh, this is not the same. Like, I liked the little underdog story and the high school of it all. And then I was like, why are they in this resort? And like, like living
Yeah.
through that. So I think it was maybe the setting, but then by the time High School Musical 3 came out, I think my memories of it are just so fond because it was this like huge thing. We all like wore the outfits. Like Target had like a High School Musical line where you could you could get the East High
Yeah.
uniforms. So like we all had like the actual East High uniforms. I was playing basketball at the time. And I remember going to the movie theater and it being, like, this big, big, big experience, and then right around that same time is when Iron Man came out and, the first Twilight movie came out,
Mhm.
and so it started this era of, like, big movies that I went to, like, event style film watching, and so I think that's why High School Musical 3 has, like, that big place in my heart is that it's
Yeah.
just that beginning of that era for me.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna watch it again. I really do think I'm gonna watch it tonight because I think that for me, my experience of it was colored by the fact that the people in the theater with me were making fun of it and not taking it as seriously as I was at the, like, wizened age of 13. Um, and there is something about a movie being in the zeitgeist that makes you feel a part of something, whereas, like,
Yeah.
High School Musical 1, when it first came out, not everyone like, it's potentially people didn't know about it at the time, like, I might have been the only one who was obsessed with it the way that I was, but something being in the zeitgeist, like, now when I go you sparked this when you started talking about Target. When I go to Target and I see, like, girly Star Wars clothes. And I'm like, for me as a kid, that wasn't available because it wasn't something that everyone loved, at least for my age group. Like, obviously, everyone has always loved Star Wars. Not that's a very bold statement, but it's always been a thing. But it's with the Cartoon Network shows that I haven't watched, but that I like greatly appreciate their existence, and with The Mandalorian and Baby Yoda, of course, and then Boba
Mhm.
Fett and Obi-Wan, like, it is so in the zeitgeist that there are clothes for little girls for it, and so, like, that always warms my heart, and I'm like, I wish that there was something like that when I was a kid so I didn't have to wear, like, men's T-shirts around and, like, cut them up into little pieces and stuff, but, yeah, so I get what you're saying about High School Musical 3 by that point being a big thing, like, it feels like you're a part of something bigger than yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's crazy because I had never I guess because in my mind, High School Musical 3 came out, years later than it actually did.
Totally.
I had never connected it to those 3 things happening all at the same time, like, High School Musical 3, Twilight, and Iron Man all came out in the same year.
Mhm.
Um, and that's I think there was this there's something, that repeated with High School Musical to those as well, where they weren't expected to be commercial successes in the way that they ended up being. Like,
Mhm.
High School Musical was just supposed to be another DCOM. They had no thought that this would be like, a movie that could launch such an obsession that you would
Mhm.
go to that level. Um, and so and that's the same thing with, with Iron Man launching the MCU in the way that it does and Twilight being so, being such a low budget, unexpected hit, to then launch these, like, large franchises. And, I guess I've learned about myself that perhaps High School Musical was the primer for that.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. It also I think it was the primer for all Disney Channel original movies to come.
Mm,
I think it changed the plot that like, all Disney Channel original movies after High School Musical kind of follow a similar plot line of, like, someone wants to do something, but it's not something that they're expected to do,
mhm,
and they then have to, like, do it in secret, and, like, I'm just thinking about Jump In, but I'm
mhm,
sure there's other
yes.
ones after that. Before that, they all had kind of unique plot lines, like Motocrossed was really fun, like,
I
uh,
loved motocross.
Read It and Weep, but after High School Musical, they were like, We've peaked, we can't do anything new."
Yeah. They're like, "We have found the formula that works." But
Yeah.
what's interesting about that is, like, I feel like the only DCOM that's broken through in the same way that I've heard about is Descendants.
Mhm, which I haven't seen.
Yeah, I haven't seen it either, but it's the only one that, like, makes it through the Disney Channel of it all to, like, come out into I actually see it on my timeline or I see people talking
Right.
about it or
Yeah.
or see ads for it. Um Which is interesting because you're right, like, they did go from, like, Halloween Town and original love I loved Halloween Town, but
I could go on a whole other tangent about Halloween Town. I watch it every year, and I thought Halloween Town High came out after High School Musical because I was like, it simply must have, like, I only knew who Lucas Grabeel and the girl who plays Kelsey, who I'm forgetting her name, was because of High School
because yeah.
Musical, but they were all in Halloween Town High before High School Musical.
Yeah, it's crazy to think about. It is
Yeah.
crazy to think about in, like, reverse order. Because I'm pretty sure I saw the whole Halloween Town franchise after I had completely consumed High School Musical. I don't think I saw Halloween Town when it was airing.
I think that same because I actually made a bet with my friend. We were watching Halloween Town. It was Halloween, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, High School Musical came out, and then this came out." And he was like, "Are you sure?" And I was like, "Well, I was only aware of this after High School Musical came out, and then we looked it up, and I was like, oh my god, I was wrong." But yeah, totally because I went back and I was like, "Ooh, what else are they in?"
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was that the first time you remember doing that? Like, I have to find out what these actors have done before this?
Yes, because then I went to go watch Thunderbirds because Vanessa Hudgens was in it, with Josh Hutcherson, I
Okay.
think. And I was obsessed with that movie too. And come to think of it, I probably just had a crush on Vanessa Hudgens. Thinking back on it, I was like obsessed with her relationship in that, and I think I just had a crush on her, and I like wanted to be these boys.
I I love that. Oh, man.
Yeah.
A good first choice as well, so,
Yeah.
So you followed Vanessa Hudgens on, and then you continued on through High School Musical, stuck with it. Do you remember obviously, you were connected to Disney Channel before this, so do
Mhm.
you remember the first time that you became, like, a Disney Channel kid? Was that just your parents turned it on or something hooked
Hmm.
you?
I think I was really obsessed with The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody. I was really into Hannah Montana. Gosh, what made me a Disney Channel kid? Sweet Life was Disney Channel, right? Not
Yeah,
Nickelodeon.
Sweet
Okay.
Life was Disney for sure. Yeah,
Um,
can you imagine?
that would be so embarrassing. iCarly? Is that
iCarly was Nick.
Nick? Yeah.
I'm pretty positive.
Yeah. I think The Sweet Life was it. I don't remember, did that come out before or after High School Musical in terms of, like it had to come out after.
Sweet Life of Zack and Cody. Oh, man.
I think it was simultaneous because I know there was the episode where Zac Efron is on, and I was obsessed
Yeah,
with
and I
that.
remember I wanna say The Sweet Life started yeah, it did. It started in 2005. So it started before
Perfect.
because I remember it being a big deal that Ashley Tisdale was going to be in High School Musical, and I feel like that was part of the, like, slotting. Like, I
Yes.
remember being like, "Ah, yes, I will watch
Yes.
Ashley do her thing here and then move on."
Right, and then after High School Musical, Zac Efron was on The Sweet Life, and I was obsessed with their relationship on that. Um, The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody, though, only had 2 seasons.
Is that true?
Yes. It had spin-off series, so it was, like, the 2 seasons and also each season had, like, 20-something episodes or whatever.
Okay.
But things that I recently learned that I'm upset about, that and then Lizzie McGuire. Oh my god, it was Lizzie McGuire. Lizzie McGuire only had 2 seasons, and Lizzie
Yeah.
McGuire is what made me a Disney Channel kid.
I think that's a fair lock because well, the other thing about Lizzie McGuire that I recently not, like, recently found out, obviously I knew this, but looking back on it, it's the first time I've been shocked by it. The movie, they are graduating, like, they're
8th grade.
going in yeah, they no, I think they're going into middle school. It's like they're very young they're not in high school yet.
They're not in high school
Um,
yet.
yeah, and
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I think it's like I'm looking it up now because, again, I've learned that everything about my, memory of Disney Channel is wrong. Um, I think they're graduating
I'm pretty sure it's 8th grade graduation, they're supposed to be, like, 14 or 13 or 14.
they're 13 years old. They're graduating, junior high, and I just in my mind, as a child, they were adults,
Right.
essentially. Because who sends their 13-year-old to have a whole pop star romance in
Right.
Italy, and
Also,
everything's fine?
who mistakes a 13-year-old for your pop star partner and then has a relationship with her when you're definitely you've gotta be at least 18.
Right, right. Well, but I guess her pop star partner was 13 as well, so
Right.
eh,
So
v
that's wild. And also, like, they wouldn't be so widely loved by adults everywhere.
yeah.
Like, he has to I mean, Paolo is a predator. He must be older. But Lizzie McGuire is the reason. Honestly, I could have come on here and talked about Lizzie McGuire. I had 2 gerbils growing up named Hillary and Lizzie. That was my
Oh.
first big obsession. That was before High School Musical. That was before The Suite Life of Zac and Cody. It was, like, the first thing that I was like, "Oh, this is something that I'm fixated on." I went to a concert. I'm pretty sure I got a Hilary Duff T-shirt. Um, I got, like, the stamp of her face that you could put on your body. It came with a Hilary Duff doll, but, like, I stamped it all over my body. Like, I was obsessed with her, and obsessed with that show, which only had 2 seasons and which I was recently watching, like, during the pandemic. I went back and was just, like, watching it on Disney Channel, Plus or whatever, and it holds up. It is like, I am so glad. I found myself watching it and I was like, I'm so glad that I had this to grow up to and to, like, watch during these formative years, because it's really about not giving into peer pressure to be someone that you're not, and to just kind of, yeah, just be who you are, let your freak flag fly, or whatever the phrase is. Even though, like, it's hard to believe that Hilary Duff, of all people, was, like, supposed to be, like, the weird kid because she's
Yeah.
so hot, and also was my first crush, definitely. Um, but it's just, like, be with your friends, be who you are, listen to other people when they, like, tell you what they need and, like, tell you about their culture, and, like, appreciate their culture, and, love your best friends, and, like, then fall in love with your best friends, and, your family comes first. It just has so many good messages, and I love it so much, and the movie holds up unlike any other DCOM. Like, it
Mhm.
really High School Musical holds up, but the Lizzie McGuire movie, I watch at least twice a year,
Yeah.
just
Oh, yeah.
because it's a good film.
Yeah, no, it really when you take especially when you don't remember that they're 13, it's an impeccable film.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, thinking about them as 13 is, like, it's a little bit hard, but the actors probably, I mean, if you go back and watch the original Lizzie McGuire, they actually do appear to be 13, but because it spanned however, like, they were in their growing years, like, they're
Yeah,
full-ass adults by the time they get
by
to
the
the
time they're
movie.
done. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. Uh, I did learn about the years being like, it's so fewer seasons than you remember because
Mhm.
you're a child, but, I had a friend in high school whose dad was a Disney Channel, producer, and he was like, "It's because kids grow up too fast,
Right.
so your taste changed so quickly that by the time you got to the 3rd or 4th season of something, you would be too old to watch it, but the kids who are now wanting to watch Disney Channel have missed 2 seasons, and back then, there was no, catch up, there's no binge, there's no Netflix.
That makes so much sense.
But yeah, no, he was just explaining that you just don't have the same attention span as a kid, which is crazy to think about now because as an adult looking back, I'm like, well, obviously Zac and Cody, like, was on for my whole life, like, that was on
Right,
forever.
but they're, like, in elementary school in that. Like,
Yeah,
they
it's
are
like 4th or
kids,
5th, yeah.
and their voices must have dropped immediately after that show ended.
I think so. Well, didn't they did the cruise ship right after. It was like
Mhm.
it stayed on, but in a new format.
Yeah, yeah, and, yeah, I don't think I watched the cruise ship one so much, but I feel like that they did that, That's So Raven did that with, like, the White House thing, um, and, like, trying to make it like, "Oh, well, we're in a different setting, and that you can watch this show if you haven't seen the original," um, and then, like, now there's the renaissance of these shows of, like, them trying to do the remakes, like,
Yeah.
That's So Raven, and then they tried to do the Lizzie McGuire remake, which I was so excited about because I just, like, wanted
Same.
to see what happened, but apparently Hilary Duff was like, "It needs to be realistic for, like, how she would be as a 30-year-old, like, this is a disservice to Lizzie," and they were like, "Well, then we're just not gonna make it."
It's just that's so crazy to me because I guess what I don't understand about that choice, and I try to be like, okay, creatively, people know what they're doing much more than I do and whatever, but with that show, I don't know who they thought was going to watch it. Like, a
Right.
bunch of children aren't gonna watch a 30-year-old trying to figure her life out. Like, that
No.
was a show for people like us.
It's for us, and the fact that they, like, wanted it to be, like, PG and all that, it's like, that's not we're not watching for Lizzie's kids. We're
Yeah.
watching to see Lizzie McGuire go to a bar and, like, make a mistake. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like
Well, and it was the thing that was so crazy about it is, like, it wasn't like she was because with Raven's Home, they did find a way to make it, like, fun for adults who maybe have kids at the time now, and, like, it is about her raising her kids, and so
Mhm,
you can see how that sets up.
mhm.
But I believe the whole setup for Lizzie McGuire was supposed to be, like, she's 30 and she still hasn't figured it out, which I was like, "Yeah, that's what I would like to see."
Right, because that's why we all relate so hard to Lizzie is because she's such a mess.
Yeah. She's out of control.
Yeah.
And that was so great. I do wonder, looking back on Lizzie McGuire, if it's part of why Fleabag appeals to all of us so much.
I haven't actually watched Fleabag,
Oh, you
but
haven't watched Fleabag?
no, but I've heard I should.
I think you would like it for sure,
Yeah.
just based off of, like, your general taste. But
Mhm.
one of the, like, it's not a spoiler, but one of the core things about that show is that she breaks the fourth wall and talks to camera
Mhm.
directly. And I remember, like, loving that so much, but also, obviously, it's, like, very highbrow, and you could do it in how, that's a Shakespearean tactic, that's all of these different things that have done it, but Lizzie McGuire did it.
Lizzie
With
McGuire did it. I've actually thought about, I'm kind of ready to get another tattoo, and I've thought really heavily about getting Cartoon Lizzie tattooed on me, just because she's so good, like, she's just what we're all thinking all the time, and she really did, she broke the fourth wall. She was Shakespeare, honestly.
Yeah, she was. I think it's so funny, like, in this lens of talking about Disney Channel, like, there was really heavy, high literature elements to a lot of what we watched.
Yeah.
And looking back at it now, I'm like, yeah, how wild that they were like, "You know what? Kids will love an animated inside monologue." I'm like, "Yeah, I would. I would love that. Thank
I
you."
would love that, and also because it gives you an insight into how panicked she actually is all the time and what mistakes she makes, like, she's, like, yelling at herself internally to be like, don't do that," and she does it anyway, and that's so relatable.
Yeah.
Oh,
I will tell my one slight embarrassing story. I normally am I grew up in LA. I feel like I'm pretty fine meeting celebrities. The one time I felt not cool at all was, and it felt not cool at all because it was the most casual situation and I knew it was coming. Um, Someone that I was, like, in the same social circle as, but, like, she's older than me from college, was dating Ethan Kraft. I don't remember his real name, but
no, he's Ethan Kraft.
he's 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 the nicest guy, like, like, totally normal, but I hate to embarrass my friends, but I was in a co-ed fraternity in college, and we were all, like, 21 at this point, I think. It was, like, my senior year, and the one of the older classes was in town because there was a wedding happening,
Mm.
and so everybody kinda came back and they were like, "Oh, let's all meet up at this bar." And it was, like, lore at this point that we all knew one of them was dating Ethan Kraft, and we were like, "Do you think she's gonna bring Ethan Kraft to this
Oh my
bar?"
god.
And everyone was like, "Oh, I don't know." I mean, it would be weird, right? If she just brought Ethan Kraft to this bar because I don't think any of us would be cool about it, and none of us were cool about it. That was the worst part. Like, we were all like, "Hey, so, hey, hi,
Oh
what's
my
up?"
god.
Yeah, it was like, truly a dream come true. Like, I think possibly the coolest experience ever, but the only thing I can say is that I watched an entire group of people who thought they were well-adjusted, like, 20-somethings in a bar, like, become Lizzie McGuire. Like, no one was cool.
That's amazing. I love that so much. Oh, what that Ethan Kraft is the perfect, like, hottie heartthrob character because he's so dumb, but so sweet.
Yeah.
So I would also if I met that actor, I wouldn't know what to say.
Yeah. Yeah, I looking back at it, I do feel bad for the guy because he was just there to support his girlfriend at a wedding, and it
Yeah,
was decades later, you know what I mean? Like, it
right.
was just, and you're dealing with, like, a bunch of people who should be, normal and, like, appear, but it was, like, a clear split because it was all of the people who I was still in college with that were our age that were behaving like overwhelmed children, and then there's, like, the group of adults that are here for a wedding that are all behaving like normal people because they have no context for Lizzie McGuire.
Right, because it came out, like, during our formative years.
Yeah. So
Wow.
it was crazy. I do feel bad because I don't think he was expecting to have to deal with it. But he
Totally.
was a champ, you know?
Yeah, I mean,
Good
I
sport about it.
wouldn't he shouldn't he shouldn't have to deal with it. However, there's just no stopping it. He was a part of our childhood.
Yeah, I can't think of even, like, people that I love now, I can't think of anyone that would cause that same type of reaction, because
Yeah.
there was something very, very heartwarming about it, like, it spoke to a generation of people that everyone was just like, "Yeah, hey,
I'm trying to be really cool right now.
yeah, what are you drinking?" Like, it was just so crazy,
Oh my god, no,
um
you should have turned to him and you should have gone, "Sup." Oh,
Oh, I wish I could have been cool enough to have had that in my repertoire to have been able to be like,
I wouldn't have known
"What's
how
up?"
to use any words in the English language, but now I'm just, like, thinking of all of his lines, like, oh my gosh, remember in the movie when they go up to those 2 Italian girls and Gordo had accidentally told them that Ethan's name was Word, so they're like, "Ciao, Word," and he's like, "Word?"
Oh, what a good character, just like the original himbo, like,
He's
I
such a himbo. Oh my god. I love it. This has suddenly become
a
Lizzie
Lizzie
McGuire
McGuire
podcast.
episode. Yeah, I was
Yeah.
just thinking the same thing. We've veered, but I think what's cool about it though is that to some degree Disney Channel did hit us at the right time that it
Mhm.
can have that much of an impact on yourself. Like
Yes.
to be a fully adjusted adult and be back to I mean, fully adjusted is such a stretch. I don't know that I am now, but to be so far away from it and to still have such a core reaction to any of those things, I think is it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and I mean, I told you when you told me about this podcast that I divide my life up into my obsessions. Like first it was Lizzie McGuire. That was before everything. And then there was Harry Potter, there was Star Wars. I guess Harry Potter probably came before, but Lizzie McGuire, Harry Potter, Star Wars, High School Musical were how I define my um, elementary school through high school years.
Mhm.
Like, those were my obsessions. So, it really is when I talk about any of them, I feel like a part of my heart is, like, where I'm, like, going in and accessing that part of my heart that is in love with Lizzie McGuire, or is in love with High School Musical.
Did you in any of those, but especially with High School Musical, share that with your friends, or did it feel like a singular experience?
I think it was mostly me. Like, my friends all liked it, but I think it was something that maybe made me a little bit weird
Okay.
because it was like I was really obsessed with it, and everyone knew that I was obsessed with it, and it gave them something to, like, give me for birthdays and whatever, like, they would get me High School Musical themed stuff. Um, but I think that I was the one out of my friends who got obsessed with things,
Mhm.
and I still am. I've been really lucky that my friends who I was friends with in kindergarten and, like, through elementary and middle school and high school are still my best friends to this day. So there's a group of, like, 6 or 7 of us that have always been best friends, and I'm still the one who has little obsessions,
Yeah.
to, like, a lesser degree now. I guess, like, now it's probably Jane Austen, but that's, like, what I wanna do for my job, so that's
Yeah.
different. But, like, now I'm the Regency girl, but before that, I was the High School Musical one, and they would watch it with me, but it was really a me thing, I think.
Yeah. Like,
Yeah.
they were sort of supportive, but not thinking about it every night
Right,
kind of thing.
exactly, and
Yeah.
I was thinking about it every night. I was, like, calling Radio Disney to talk about it. I was doing that with, Lizzie McGuire too, but, like, I think I have memories of getting on I found an old journal when I was home during the pandemic, and it was like, "I called in Radio Disney 3 times today, and at one time, I actually got to be on the air," and, like, I
Oh.
was, like, really, like, spending all of my time thinking about High School Musical.
Oh, that is too sweet. I
Yeah.
really love Yeah, calling into Radio Disney is a core memory of mine as well. Like, I
Yeah.
remember I had a little radio that I specifically used to listen to Radio Disney, which
Yeah,
sounded awful. It was an
same.
AM radio station.
Mine was a Spice Girls radio that came with my bike.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
What a I wish now I'm jealous. Um, well, something else I'm curious about because I think, one thing that comes out of this a lot, and I have been really interested in hearing people's responses and how it impacts how it impacts their kind of communication with other people. Something you said earlier is that when people ask how you got into musical theater, you do say High School Musical.
Yeah.
Is that something that you've always been comfortable volunteering, or is it something that you've had to get comfortable admitting to some degree?
I think I think I there would have been a time in my life that I would have been embarrassed
Mhm.
by it, because there was a time in my life, specifically around when I was, like, 15, where I became aware that my little obsessions were kind of weird, um, particularly because I went to summer camp, and I was there from like, during all of these years I started when I was 9, I think, or 10, and I was there until I was 16, um, and I went by the name Artupio at that camp, which is
Oh.
R2D2 and C3PO mixed together, because the first day when I was 10, they were like, "You can go by whatever you want," and I was like, "I'm gonna go by Artupio," and so people called me that throughout my entire, like, formative years of life. And when I was 15, I remember the specific moment where I was like, "It's kind of weird that people call me this, and they think that I'm just, like, obsessed." Like, I don't know what my actual personality is outside of, like, loving High School Musical and Star Wars, because during those years, that's what I was putting up on my walls at camp, and I was going by this weird name, and I was like, "Can everyone just call me Molly and, let me
Oh.
find myself?" And they were all like, "But that's, like, not how we know you." And that was, like, when I started realizing, this isn't like, do people think this is weird?
Mm.
And I don't think that any of my close friends did, but I think that people thought of me as the girl who was obsessed with things. So I think that that time, I might have wanted to put away the High School Musical of it all. And in following years, like, I think I didn't talk so much about it. I don't think it was until I got to college where I felt like it was actually okay to love High School Musical as much as I still do, because all of my college friends are also weirdos like me, 1, but also 2, I think we pass a threshold, or at least I did, after high school, where you stop trying, or at least I stopped trying to fit into a mold or a group, or like the status quo, if you will, and fitting into like, what do I think people want from me, or like, what do I think is cool enough to be liked by people, and start being like, what do I find joy in, um what is just like good for me. And I think that at that threshold, when I got to college, I was like, I can love High School Musical. I can my housemates and I watched the Lizzie Mcguire movie multiple times each semester. Also, like, when you can assign a drinking game to something, it automatically is like, "Oh, wait, I love this movie." You're like,
This is
literally,
the
the other
best
night,
movie ever.
yeah, I did a High School Musical drinking game the other night, and I was like, "This is so funny," because we were drinking every time Miss Darvis said musicale, or every time, Chad inexplicably had a basketball. Like, why does he have a basketball in every scene? But also, I think maybe there's a threshold where people stop, like, caring whether they're watching something ironically or unironically, if
Mm,
that makes sense. Like,
yeah.
instead of being like, "Oh, I'm only gonna watch this movie," like, I think maybe, and this threshold might happen even later. So first you stop caring what people think about you and watch whatever you want. And then after college, I think I stopped watching things ironically, or like acting like I was watching them ironically, and just simply watched them.
Okay.
Like,
Yeah.
I just simply watched a High School Musical the other day, and a couple months ago, my friends and I, my co-host and I, actually were like, "Let's watch the Lizzie McGuire movie because it's a great film."
Mm,
And instead of being like, "Let's watch it ironically," uh, or pretend like we're watching it ironically, because actually everyone loves that movie, and everyone loves High School Musical, I think.
yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. I agree. Yeah, I think there's something really interesting about that. I'm kind of jealous of your timeline because I don't think it's the same timeline I have at all. I kind of have a reverse, which I think is nice. Like, I moved back to LA when I was in 7th grade, and I went to an all-girls school. Um, and, like, by the 8th grade, I had kind of found my group of friends that, because there wasn't as much, like, I have to be impressive to boys, or I have to do this, or there's, like, that inherent social construct that starts around that time when you start to become aware of yourself.
Mhm.
There was less, like, concern about being cool, I guess.
Yeah.
I look back on it now and I'm like, "Oh, I guess there were definitely cool girls, but we didn't care." Like, there wasn't as much of a because there wasn't really anything to gain by being cool. Just you kinda were,
Right.
it was what it was. But I remember and I think it's so funny because of where I ended up going to college, but I remember when I went to college being like, "I need to figure out how to fit in or how to match up." Which is so funny because I went to Emerson, which is not a place that really should project that kind of energy.
Right.
But I remember being very overwhelmed and being like, "I do not fit into this place," and trying to find the right way to fit in because the stuff that I loved was not, it wasn't film school stuff. Like, it was I did start to have an appreciation for, more quote unquote serious films or those types of things. But I spent like the first 2 years of college seeing like tentpole movies by myself. Like I went to the theaters to go see Marvel or see, to see like the big movies by myself because no one like wanted to admit that they were seeing them. You know what I
Mm.
mean? It was like this
Mhm.
weird thing. And then when I joined my fraternity that I was talking about earlier, that was when I kind of started to be like, okay, we can all be serious about One Direction and we could all, we could all enjoy ourselves again. And finding like that group of people. And then sort of like getting back into being comfortable with that until I moved back to LA to start working in TV again and being like, oh, I need to have answers to questions of like what inspired you to go to film school that aren't the true answers.
Right, but, like, you shouldn't have like, I think that you should be able to be like, "Yes, like, Iron Man made me wanna make movies." Like, I think
Yeah.
it's it has to do with what it really this question really does have to do with, like, how we feel people perceive us and our level of comfort with that, and I think there's a time in everyone's life where we're not comfortable with how people perceive us, and I remember so viscerally that time in my life where I wouldn't have said that High School Musical inspired me to become an actor,
Yeah.
um, because I was afraid that that would make people think that I was weird, and I totally hear you that, like, I just wanna be able to say that.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's true. It's like I feel like that's a more interesting answer anyway than being the 15th person to say Spring Awakening. So,
Right, and
um
I think that the same thing, like, when you're talking about why you wanted to make movies, like, I think being able to say the things that actually genuinely bring you joy and, like, make you want to be in that field will always stand out more to people and also are usually more relatable, I think.
Yeah.
I think that if anyone who says that their favorite movies like Eraserhead is lying.
Yeah,
Like
I think it was, Samuel L. Jackson just recently had an interview where he said, "I would have traded every like, I'm happy to not have had an Oscar because I'm terribly misquoting him, and I'm sure I could find the real quote and put the article up." But he essentially said, like, he would have rather been Nick Fury, like, that's the choice that he's happy with.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that's so true, like, I would love to watch Samuel L. Jackson do literally whatever he wants, but, I am thrilled to have been watching him do what he's chosen to do, just to
Yeah.
have fun.
Yeah, he talked to I think in that same interview, he talked about getting to hold a purple lightsaber and just, like,
Yeah,
dance around with it, and it's like, yeah, you should make the movies that are fun for you,
yeah,
and watch the movies that are fun for you, and, like, really movies exist and shows exist to bring entertainment and bring joy to people, at least I think so, and I mean, I'm sure that there are also movies that are meant to be beautiful, and I've seen some of those too, and they were beautiful, and they were well made, and I can appreciate that, but, like, at the end of a hard day, I'm gonna turn on High School Musical.
yeah. Yeah, I think, and I always I realize sometimes in these rants that we end up going on, like, I make it sound like I think there's no worth to kind of weird indie movies, which is so not true. Like,
Right.
I love a movie that makes me think or a little weird film, and a lot of times, like, I find that to be an alienating thing too, where I'm like, "Let's watch this movie that is really powerful," and people are like, "Yeah, I don't wanna sit here and talk about it for 100 years."
Totally, totally.
So it goes both ways, I think, for sure.
It does, yeah, exactly, and, like, gosh, there was a movie that popped into my head when you were just saying that, Well, I mean, it's the same thing, isn't it, with, like, me watching the BBC Pride and Prejudice over and over again and
Mm.
being like, "But you don't understand, it's a comfort movie," and people are like, It's not, like, there are people in, like, these dresses, like, walking around everyone finds joy in different things, and for me, watching the BBC Pride and Prejudice gives me the same feeling as watching High School Musical, and I can't explain why that is, and I'm sure I could write a whole essay on it and, like, not figure it out, but I think that what's beautiful about that is that everyone has the things that they like, and I'm very much of the school of, like, not yucking someone's yums. I have this coworker who has completely different movie taste than me, and I we can agree on a couple movies. We can agree on Contact with Jodie Foster,
Okay.
um, the 2005 Pride and Prejudice, and Die Hard. Like, those are the movies that we agree on.
What a spread.
Yes, I don't know, and other than that, he's mostly into, like, indie artsy kind of films, and, like, that's just not what I'm watching, but I love hearing him talk about them, and I love telling him about High School Musical type things, and, like, I think that everyone has the things that they like, and we should all just be able to feel that joy and express that joy freely.
I agree with you. I do. I think there's something, like you're saying with your coworker, what's enjoyable is listening to him talk about what makes him happy.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't matter what that thing is. It just if listening to someone talk passionately about something, whether you are interested in that thing or not, is attractive and wonderful.
Yeah, totally.
So, I do have one other question, which is, I think something on this topic that's interesting is that if you told people that what made you want to be an actor was Star Wars, you might get a different reaction than when you say High School Musical. Do you, as someone who's like a big fan of both, have a pinpoint as to why, when they're both pretty commercial and wild movies, one is maybe respected a little bit more than the other?
Hmm. Well, what's interesting is that Star Wars also sparked an interest in acting for me, and I always wanted to be in a Star Wars movie. High School
Yeah.
Musical sparked my interest in, like, acting on stage and also writing. I started trying to write, but
Mm.
mostly I was writing a role for Zac Efron. So that's, like, a whole other story. Like, I was writing a role where I could play opposite Zac Efron.
Zac Efron.
Oh, yeah, why is Star Wars more respected than High School Musical? I think it's because it came out in cinemas as opposed to a DCOM, but they are both, and I was watching an interview with George Lucas the other day, and he was like, "Stop trying to gatekeep Star Wars. It's a movie for kids." Like, if you have a
Oh.
problem with Jar Jar Binks, shut up, basically, is what he was saying. Because he was like, it's people used to hate R2D2 and C3PO because they were like, we're not here for comic relief, we're here for like a serious Space Ninjas movie. And it's like, you're here for a Space Ninjas movie.
Yeah.
Like, it's a kids movie. It deals with a lot of heavy subjects, but it was initially targeted at kids. Um, I think that a lot of it would probably have to do with is, like, one, the musical theater of it. I think a lot of people don't have respect for musical theater, and I think I'm guilty of that in college. Like, I had a similar departure from musical theater, and now I'm back to it because my girlfriend and all of her friends are, like, really into listening to musicals, and I'm like, "Oh, these bring me joy." Um, I think a lot of people don't respect musical theater, though, and I also think that people don't respect romance,
Mm.
as a genre, and High School Musical, despite being a kids movie, is a romantic movie, and it's a rom-com and all of that, and I think that, because the world has a lot of, like, loud men in it, they have more respect for war movies and movies with fighting and stuff like that, and bigger budgets, although the original Star Wars did not have a big budget, but, like, yeah, I think it has to do with the subject matter and it being more outwardly for kids, like, it's about kids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a good answer, I think. I think it
Thanks.
makes sense. Yeah, I just think it's interesting because there's a bar out here that I talk about all the time, that you would love if you ever come to LA, called Scum and Villainy Cantina.
Wow.
It is literally built to look like the cantina in Star Wars.
Wow.
And when you walk in, it just feels it truly just feels like a walking into the movie set. But, like, not even I think, like, you can walk onto a movie set and it feels like a movie set. This feels like you have walked into the cantina.
Wow.
Um, and something that I found really interesting the first time I went there is I went for my birthday a month ago now, a couple weeks ago.
Mhm.
I just had to check the date. I was like, what day is it?" But I went for my birthday and I remember feeling nervous about asking my friends if they wanted to go there for my birthday, even though everybody's, like, totally happy to do whatever you want,
Yeah.
and then going and being so overwhelmed by just how happy everybody was to be, like, people were in costumes, like, the bartenders are in costumes, everything's in theme, everyone's just having a great time, and there was something just so wonderful about that, but I remember feeling like, "Oh, this works for Star Wars." Like, this works for this type of thing, and I don't know that it would feel the same for something like high school. Like, if someone wanted to make a Disney Channel bar, I would be there in 14 seconds.
Oh, yeah.
But but I do wonder, like, how well it would be received or how much fun everyone would have.
Right, like, it's like those pop-ups that have been, like, starting to happen over the last couple of years where they, like, do the Friends pop-up or the Office pop-up, and it's like, these are like, what makes something worthy of having a pop-up and, like, a fandom, like, a place for fandom to gather, and, like, why don't we have those for Disney Channel? I think I yeah, why is Disney Channel not the same, like, level of I think it's because it's something that we like when we're kids, and I think that
Mhm.
people expect us to grow up at a certain time,
Yeah.
and so, like, sharing that love at our age, like, feels less appropriate, but, like, it's these are things that formed us and, like, that we love and bring us joy and, like, made us who we are, and, um, yeah, I would love a High School Musical themed
Yeah.
bar.
I'd be there in full truly,
I'd be there
truly.
right now.
You know what? Honestly, Disney Channel, call us. We're willing to make 2, 1 in New York, 1 in Los
Yep.
Angeles.
Yeah, exactly. It'd be really
We'll
profitable,
do all
I
the
think.
work.
I
Yeah, I
think
think
that once
so.
you start talking about these things, everyone actually loves them. Like, nobody's, like, sitting there like, "No, hate High School Musical." It's like, everyone has a good time.
Yeah, it's hard. It's yeah, I've always been fascinated by people who say that, like, they can't enjoy a musical, like, it just is so distressing to them,
Mm.
because I'm like, it's just people so excited they're bursting out in song.
Yeah.
It's the whole concept is that they're so overly emotional that the only way they can express themselves is by singing.
Yeah. I love it.
Yeah, it's too good, and if you like Mamma Mia, you'll like I think
Yeah.
that's something that I find interesting. You like Mamma Mia, but you have something against High School Musical. Why?
Right.
Reevaluate that.
Totally.
Um, oh man. Well, I think this has been an amazing and lovely conversation. I feel you've probably answered this already, but I end it the same way every time. So, if you had never seen High School Musical, if dear Kenny Ortega had never come into your life, what would be different about who you are today?
I truly don't think that I would be the same person that I am today. I don't think I would have gone into theater. I think I would have still done improv and stuff, but I think I wouldn't have had such a desire to join Syracuse Children's Theater and therefore wouldn't have done theater there for 4 years and maybe wouldn't have been in the musicals at school, wouldn't have ended up going to college for theater, wouldn't be working at a theater today.
So you basically would just be someone else.
I would just be someone else. I really would. I do owe a lot of who I am to High School Musical, and again, a part of my heart that was formed during the years 2006 to 2008 is High School Musical. It's, like, just in
Yeah.
there as part of
Yeah.
me.
I really love that. I have, like, just, like, a mental image of, like, your heart divided in
Yeah, me
very
too.
specific fandom pieces. That's very cute.
Yeah.
I love that. Well, I think a note to end it on, that I think you hit a couple of times in a number of things that you really love is to make your own status quo, I think.
Yeah, I
And
love
stick to
that.
that one.
Yeah, stick to your status quo.
Love that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you guys for joining us. Thank you, Molly, for hanging out. And we'll be back next week.
Thanks so much for having me.
We'll be back next Wednesday with a brand new guest. And until then, make sure you sign up for our newsletter, which you can access on our website at tandonproductions.com and just click our show art and sign up there. Or you can also find me on Twitter, and my newsletter's right there at Marissa Kumari. And I'll see you next Wednesday.